The wind was cold on planet E57. It was not the kind of cold that hurt, but the kind that made everything feel empty. Sergeant Ray Carter walked slowly between the broken rocks. Holding his scanner in one hand and his rifle in the other, he was alone on this patrol. His team was back at the base. Resting after another long day, Ray had volunteered to scout ahead just to clear his mind. The war had changed him. He didn't like to talk anymore. He didn't sleep much either. Too many memories. Too many faces he couldn't forget as he walked through the gray valley. Something strange caught his eye. A piece of metal, shiny and twisted, sticking out. From the dirt, he stepped closer. It was wreckage, an alien ship, half buried and burned. Ray had seen many enemy ships before, but this one looked older, more damaged, and forgotten. Like no one had touched it in weeks. He raised his scanner. No signals. But then he heard something, very soft. Like breathing, careful. He pointed his rifle toward the dark corner of the wreck. And then he saw her, lying on the ground, curled up like a child, an alien woman. Her skin was light blue, her eyes glowing faintly. Her body was thin, too thin, like she hadn't eaten in days. She looked at him, her eyes full of fear. But she didn't move. She was too weak. Ray froze. He had been trained to shoot on sight. Aliens were the enemy, after all, but something about her made him stop. She didn't look like a soldier. She looked lost, broken, starving. Slowly, Ray lowered his rifle. He reached into his pack and pulled out a sealed meal. It was nothing special, just a standard ration bar, but it was food. He walked forward, step by step, and held it out. She stared at it, confused. Then she looked at him. Her hands trembled as she reached for the food. She touched it gently, like she didn't believe it was real. Then she pulled it close and opened the pack. When the smell reached her nose, she froze. Tears filled her eyes, and then she broke down. She started crying, not loud sobs, but quiet, painful tears. Like something deep inside her had finally given up. Ray didn't know what to do. He just sat near her, not too close, and watched. The stars above them were quiet. The war didn't matter in that moment. He was a human, and she was an alien. But she was hungry, and he had food. That was all. After a few minutes, she stopped crying. Us. She looked at him again, her eyes softer now. She nodded, just once, as if to say, "Thank you." Ray nodded back. For a while, they just sat there in silence. Then she spoke. Only one word, in a voice so soft he almost didn't hear it. "Why?" Ray tilted his head, not sure what she meant. Why what? Why did he help her? Why didn't he shoot? Even he didn't know the answer. He just said, "You looked hungry. That's all." She nodded again, and then her eyes closed. She fell asleep, the food still in her hands. Ray looked around. It wasn't safe here. Someone might come, an enemy, patrol, or even his own people, if they found her. They'd shoot first and ask questions later. Ray stood up. He looked at her, then at the sky. Something told him this was not just an accident. She didn't crash here for no reason. And she didn't survive alone for this long without a story. He had to know more. Carefully, he lifted her up in his arms. She was light, like carrying a child, and then he began walking back to base, not through the main road, but through the rocks, the quiet paths, the secret ways he had learned from months of war. The night wind followed them, and above, the stars kept watching. Ray didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know if it was right or wrong. But he knew one thing. This was just the beginning. The door closed behind him with a soft hiss. The lights inside the bunker were dim, warm, and quiet. Ray stood still for a moment, holding the sleeping alien woman in his arms. He looked around, listening. No footsteps. No voices. Good. Everyone was still asleep. He walked toward the back room. The one no one used anymore. It was once a storage unit, but now it was just dust and silence. He laid her down gently on the old medical bed. She didn't wake up. Her breathing was slow, her body still weak, but her face looked peaceful now. Not scared like before, Ray sat down in the corner of the room. Resting his back against the wall, he had questions. Many questions. Who was she? Why was she alone in a wrecked ship? And what kind of enemy cries over a meal? The heater buzzed quietly in the background. Hours passed. Ray didn't sleep. He just watched her, listened to her breathing, and thought, when she finally opened her eyes, the room was glowing with morning light. She sat up slowly, her hands shaking. Ray stood and offered her a can of water. She took it with both hands and drank carefully. Then she looked at him, really looked. Her eyes were a soft silver now, no longer glowing, but calm. "You brought me here," she said. Voice quiet. Ray nodded. "You were starving," he replied. "I didn't want to leave you there." She looked down at her hands, like she wasn't sure they were real. "My name is Sira," she whispered. Ray blinked. That was the first real thing he knew about her. Her name. "I'm Ray," he said. She nodded slowly. Then she looked around, nervous. "This place?" she asked. "Is it safe?" Ray hesitated. "For now," he answered, "but no one can know you're here." Sira nodded again, understanding. She pulled her legs close, curling into herself. Ray noticed her arms. There were marks, burned scars, and something worse. Thin lines like metal bands had once held her wrists. Prison cuffs. Ray had seen them before, but not on enemies. On slaves? Did they do that to you? He asked. She didn't answer. She just looked away. That silence told him everything. Ray stood up and pulled out another ration pack. He placed it beside her without saying a word. Then he left the room. Later that night, he came back. She had eaten the food and was sitting on the bed, staring at the wall. "Thank you," she said. Without looking at him, Ray nodded. He didn't need thanks. He just wanted answers. "Why were you alone?" He asked gently. Sira was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke. Slowly. "My ship was not a warship," she began. "We were taken." Ray frowned. "Taken?" She looked at him now, her voice more steady. "They captured us, many of us, during peace missions. Not your kind," she said quickly. "Another kind, worse." She paused. "Machines." With faces of fire, Ray's blood turned cold. He had heard whispers of such creatures. Not from command, but from deserters. From broken people who saw too much. He never believed them, until now. "You escaped?" He asked. She nodded. "Ship crashed. I ran, then hid. No food, no water. I waited to die." Ray sat down again. Now across from her, she was not a soldier. She was not even a threat. She was a survivor, like him, and maybe, like him, she had lost everything for the next few days. Ray brought her food and water when no one was watching. She never asked for anything. Never complained. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they just sat in silence. But each day, her strength returned a little more. She never smiled, but her eyes softened one evening as he handed her another ration. She asked, "Why are you helping me?" Ray looked at her and answered honestly, "Because you're not the monster they told us about, and maybe I'm not either." That night, she had a nightmare. She screamed in a language Ray didn't understand. He rushed into the room and found her sitting up, shaking when she saw him. Her eyes filled with fear. He didn't touch her. He just sat beside the bed, waiting until she calmed down. When morning came, she said only 2 words. "Don't leave." Ray didn't. And in that quiet bunker, between war and secrets, a fragile trust began to grow. But outside, something dark was moving. The machines with fire faces had not forgotten her, and now they were coming. Rain fell on the metal roof like quiet footsteps from the sky. Inside the hidden room, the air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Sierra sat near the corner, her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes staring at nothing. Ray watched her from the other side of the room. He could feel something was changing in her. Something deep, something she had locked away, was trying to rise again that morning. She had asked for paper. Ray didn't ask why. He gave her an old notebook and a pen. Now, she was drawing, not writing, not speaking. Just drawing. At first, Ray thought they were just shapes, maybe random lines. But as the pages turned, the shapes became clearer. Towers, machines, eyes with wires, cages, stars falling from the sky. And faces, so many faces. Some were human. Some were not, but all of them were screaming. Ray sat down beside her, slowly. "What are these?" he asked, his voice soft. She kept drawing. Then she whispered, "Memories." Ray felt a chill run through him. "These are from your planet." She shook her head. "No," she said. "These are from the cages." For the first time, she turned the notebook toward him. She pointed at one drawing. It showed a round room filled with glass tubes. Inside each tube was a body, asleep or dead. Some were alien, some were human. "They took us from different worlds," she said. "No names, no light, just numbers." Ray looked at her, shocked. "Humans too?" She nodded. "Not your soldiers, not your people," she explained. "Lost ones. Taken during peace talks or space travel. Your commanders knew." Ray couldn't believe it. He wanted to say no, to deny it. But he had seen strange reports. Missing ships, unexplained disappearances. Now it made a horrible kind of sense. Sierra closed the notebook. "I drew these so I don't forget," she said. "If I forget, it's like they win." Ray clenched his fists. "Who are they?" "Do you call them?" Sierra looked at him, her voice like a broken string. "The collectors," she whispered. "They don't fight wars, they steal life." She stood and walked toward the small window. Her voice grew distant, like it was echoing from far away. "They came in silence," she said. "No ships, no sound, just lights in the sky. They spoke in a language of pain. They said we were data, nothing more." Ray felt sick in his stomach. He had fought in battles, lost friends, seen blood. But this was something darker, colder. It wasn't war, it was harvesting. Sierra turned to face him again. Her eyes were steady now. No fear, just truth. "I escaped because a storm hit our transport," she said. "They were moving us to a deeper base. But something went wrong. My pod broke open. I ran until I found your world's land." Ray leaned forward. "Why didn't you go to the other side? Why not signal my people?" She lowered her head. "They would not believe me. Your people don't listen to us, your leaders." "Sign silence." Ray blinked. "Signed what?" She walked to the wall and tapped it lightly. "Your top people know about the collectors," she said, "but they hide it. They want peace in front of cameras, but behind the stars. They trade lives." Ray felt like the floor was shaking beneath him. He wanted to scream, to break something. Instead, he sat down and said quietly, "Show me everything." Sierra opened the notebook again and flipped through more pages, each one was like a scream trapped in paper. Torture machines, mind scans, memory wipes, breeding tanks. Ray could barely look. But he forced himself to. Then, Sierra reached into her belt pouch. From it, she pulled a small, silver cube, glowing faintly. "This," she said, "has proof, images. Voices, logs, coordinates. They can't erase this." Ray took the cube in his hands. He had seen tech like this before, but never held one. It was alien, yes, but real, heavy with truth. He looked at Sierra. "Why are you giving this to me?" She looked tired, but strong. "Because you fed me. Because..." You didn't shoot, and because, maybe. You're not like the others that night. Ray didn't sleep. He sat with the cube, turning it in his hand. He knew what it meant if he showed this to the wrong people. They'd kill him, but if he stayed quiet, the collectors would keep winning. In the shadows of war, one man now held a story that could shake the stars. And somewhere far beyond the sky, the collectors were watching. The alarm didn't ring. The sky didn't change, but something in the air had shifted. Ray felt it first, not in sound, but in silence, a silence too perfect, too controlled, like the world had stopped breathing. He stood outside the bunker, holding a mug of cold coffee. The stars above him were quiet, blinking like tired eyes. It looked like a normal night, but it wasn't. Something was watching behind him, inside the room. Sierra stared at the small, glowing cube in her hands. She hadn't spoken much since she gave it to Ray. Her eyes stayed fixed on the shadows, as if waiting for them to move. Then the sound came, not loud, but sharp, a click, metal against stone. Ray spun around, rifle raised, but he saw nothing. "Sierra," he called, "get your things." She didn't ask why, she just moved, fast and silent. Ray ran to the hill near the bunker and pulled out his long-range scanner. It blinked once. Then twice. On the third blink, it flashed red. Unidentified movement, minus 1.6 kilometers, closing fast. He swallowed hard. That wasn't normal. No patrol moved that fast. No animal registered like that. And no signal should be that quiet, unless it was hiding. "They found us," Sierra said behind him. Her voice had no panic, just truth. Ray nodded. "The collectors?" She stepped beside him, her face pale in the starlight. "Not them," she said. "They're scouts. They are not machines. But worse, loyal." Ray didn't wait. He grabbed his gear and handed Sierra a small pack. "Take the food. Take the water and stay close." They didn't use the main gate. Ray knew the hidden way through the canyon. The rocks were narrow, the path hard to follow. Perfect for escape. Behind them, the base lights flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed everything. No power, no signal, no life. It had begun. They moved fast, but not loud. Every step was careful, every breath silent. Sierra stayed close behind, her eyes scanning the shadows. Ray trusted her instincts now more than his own. After 1 hour, they reached the edge of the dark forest. Ray stopped and turned, far in the distance. 3 red lights blinked in the air. They hovered, moved, paused, then began coming closer. "Drones," he whispered. "Military design. But not ours." Sierra pulled him into the trees. "They can smell heat." She said, "We must go deeper." The forest was cold, the ground wet. Branches scratched their faces and arms, but they kept going, behind them. The sound of the drones grew louder. Then it happened. A flash of white light lit the forest like lightning. Ray grabbed Sarah and dove behind a fallen tree. The beam passed. "Just inches above them, they're scanning," Sierra whispered. Ray clenched his jaw. "We need cover." She pointed toward a rock formation. Half buried in moss, old bunker, from long ago. Ray didn't ask how she knew. They ran, crawling. Through roots and mud until they reached it. The door was broken, rusted, but they squeezed inside. It was dark, cold, and smelled of rot, but it was safe for now. Ray sat on the ground, breathing hard. Sierra leaned against the wall. Eyes closed. "I told you they'd come," she said. Ray looked at her. "You didn't tell me they'd be." So fast, she opened her eyes and stared into the blackness. "They don't wait," she said. "They hunt." Ray checked the cube still hidden in his pack. It was warm, like it was awake. A soft pulse, like a heartbeat. He looked at Sierra. "They're after this, aren't they?" She nodded. "They will not stop." Ray leaned his head back against the cold wall. We need a plan. We can't just run forever. Sierra walked to a small crack in the wall and looked outside. Her voice was quiet, but sharp. There is a place, she said. Old Cum Station, underground, before your people arrived, if we reach it. We can send the data. Ray looked at her. That far? She nodded once. 3 days, Ray stood up and loaded his rifle. Then we moved before sunrise. The wind outside howled like a warning. Above the trees, the red lights floated in slow circles, waiting, watching, hunting, inside the bunker. Ray and Sierra made no sound, but in their eyes, a fire had started. This was not just survival now. This was a mission. And in the darkness, they were no longer just a soldier and a lost alien. They were witnesses. They were targets. And together, they were the only chance the galaxy had to know the truth. The air smelled like dust and time. Old time. Forgotten time. Ray had never felt anything like it. Not even in ancient ruins or broken ships. This place didn't feel dead. It felt like it was holding its breath. They had found it by following the stars and Sierra's memory. A place buried under earth and silence, hidden from satellites, untouched by war. The forest had swallowed it, but beneath the roots and stone, it was still there. A door without locks. Made of metal that hummed when Ray touched it, it opened. With a sound that felt like a sigh inside. Everything was dark, but the walls still glowed faintly, like they remembered who built them. Sierra stepped forward first. She moved like someone who had returned home after many years. Not happy, not sad, just heavy. Ray followed, rifle ready but low. "What is this place?" he asked. Sierra looked around, her voice soft. "Before war," she said. "We had science, not weapons, but learning. This was a listening post, built to hear the stars." Ray walked beside her, staring at the strange writing. Along the walls, it flowed like water, curved like wind, nothing like human symbols. Yet somehow, peaceful, they reached the center of the station. A wide round room filled with floating lights. A console pulsed in the center. Still alive after all this time, Sierra placed her hand on it. It lit up in blue and white. The cube in Ray's pack vibrated, then floated out on its own. It drifted to the console and locked into place. Then, everything changed. Holograms filled the air. Images, voices, screams, maps, names, so many names. Thousands, maybe more. Ray stepped back as the room lit up with memory. The truth was alive now, and it was loud. He saw humans, men and women trapped in cages, aliens beside them, all suffering the same fate. He saw the collectors tall, with burning eyes and hands like blades. Their voices were not spoken, they pierced the mind directly. "You are data," they said. "You are fuel." Sierra closed her eyes. "It is all here," she whispered. The record they tried to erase. Ray's stomach twisted. One screen showed something worse, a message log between human leaders and the collectors. Signed, sealed, approved, controlled disappearances. Trade for peace, deny all knowledge. Ray couldn't breathe. He saw signatures, faces, of men he once respected. They had known. They had allowed it. All for silence. He looked at Sierra. Her face was calm, but her hands were shaking. "This is why I ran," she said. "This is why they chase me. If this gets out, everything changes." Ray stepped forward and stared into the projection. "This, ... will destroy the peace talks." Sierra looked at him. Then maybe peace was a lie. He didn't answer. He couldn't. He had spent his whole life fighting enemies. But the real enemy had been inside the walls of power. "I need to send this," Ray said, "not just to my base, but to the whole network." Sierra nodded. "You must hurry. Once this activates, they will come. Not scouts, the real ones." Ray walked to the console. The interface was strange, but His hands moved with instinct. The system read his DNA, his military ID, his voice. It accepted him. The truth wanted out. As he activated the signal, the room began to hum louder. A countdown started. 1 minute to full data transmission. Lights flashed around the walls. Power surged through ancient circuits. The station was waking up. Sierra stepped back, eyes locked. On the doorway, "They're close," she whispered. "I can feel them." Ray turned toward her. "If they come," she stopped him with a look. "I'll hold them. You send it." Ray wanted to argue, but he didn't. There was no time. The signal reached 20 seconds. Then 10. Outside, something growled. Not an animal, not a machine, something in between. The door exploded inward. Figures stepped in, dark, tall, burning eyes. Ray raised his weapon. Sierra raised her hand, and the room filled with light. The signal reached 0. The data was gone. Out there, flying across every channel. Every soldier, every colony, every leader would see it. The truth was no longer hidden. Ray turned to fire. Sierra was already moving. Like lightning, like wind, she was no longer weak. She was fury. The war had changed, but now, so had its reason. And somewhere in that forgotten room of stars and silence, a voice spoke through the airwaves. "This is Sergeant Ray Carter. You've been lied to. And I'm done being silent." The truth had wings now. It flew across satellites, signals, and silent networks. It reached places it was never meant to go. It broke walls made of lies. And in the quiet that followed, the world began to shake. Ray and Sierra ran. The old station behind them burned with blue fire. The collectors were not just chasing now. They were raging, screaming through machines, tearing trees from the earth. But Ray had done it. The signal was out, and the lie was dead. They reached a cliffside ledge just as the morning sun began to rise. But it was not warmth that touched their skin. It was heat from behind metal, flames, and war. Ray held his communicator tight in one hand. He switched to a hidden frequency, one only command officers knew. He spoke quickly. "This is Sergeant Ray Carter. Urgent evac needed. Coordinates uploading now. I have high-value intel and non-hostile witness." The voice that replied was calm. "To calm. Copy that, Sergeant. Evac en route." Ray looked at Sierra and nodded. "We made it." But Sierra didn't smile. Her eyes were locked on the sky. Minutes later, a transport ship appeared. Sleek, black, fast. It landed in a storm of dust and noise. The ramp lowered, and 3 soldiers stepped out. Their armor was clean, too clean. Their faces unreadable. Ray led Sierra forward. The lead soldier raised a scanner. "Stand down, Sergeant," he said. "We'll take it from here." Ray frowned. "Take what?" "The witness," the soldier replied, "and the device." Ray tightened his grip on the communicator. "No," he said, "she's under my protection. And the data's already out." The soldier smiled slightly. "Then you've already broken protocol. High Command has ordered containment." Ray stepped back. His mind raced. They knew. They had always known. This rescue wasn't for safety. It was cleanup. Sierra whispered, "I told you, they wear your armor, but they serve silence." The second soldier raised his weapon. Ray raised his first. A long pause filled the air. No wind, no birds, only breath. Then, a voice crackled in Ray's ear. A new voice, older, General Havers. A man Ray had followed for years. "Ray," the voice said, calm and cold, "you've made things difficult." Ray spoke through clenched teeth. "Is it true? Did you sign off on it?" Silence, then, "Yes." Ray felt his heart twist. "All of them?" he asked. "Humans? Aliens?" All traded like numbers. Another pause. They were necessary sacrifices. Haver said, to protect billions. Ray closed his eyes. No, he said. They were just inconvenient truths. He shut the communicator and fired first. The soldier on the left went down. Sierra jumped behind cover, energy swirling in her hands. The cliffside became a battlefield. Ray moved like lightning, his training alive in his muscles. He ducked, fired, rolled, shouted. Sierra unleashed a wave of kinetic force, knocking 2 soldiers back. But more came, from the trees, from the shadows. Too many. Ray was hit in the side. He dropped behind a rock, bleeding, breathing hard. Sierra rushed to him, hands glowing. She placed her palm on his wound. Pain, then fire, then numbness. He could breathe again. You need to run, he said. No. She answered, not without you. A voice rang out from behind the flames. Stop now, or we end this the hard way. Ray looked over the ridge. More dropships were landing. This was no longer a capture mission. It was a purge. He touched Sierra's shoulder. Get to the forest, take the backup cube. There's a contact in Sector 9, he'll protect you. Sierra's eyes filled with light. What about you? Ray smiled weakly. I'll keep them busy. He stood, raised his weapon. One last time and shouted into the fire. You want silence. Then fight for it. Sierra ran, not away, but forward into the trees, into the unknown. The cube was safe in her hand, and her heart carried the memory of the man who gave her one meal and a second chance. Behind her, the sky burned, but ahead, something else waited. Hope. They say history changes in war rooms and battlefields. But sometimes, it changes in silence, in one act of kindness, in one moment when someone says, I won't look away. Sierra stood on the edge of the broken city. Rain fell gently on her face, not the acid rain of her memories. This was soft, clean, real, and for the first time in years. She wasn't hiding. News feeds from every world now showed the truth. The images, the recordings, the voices all sent by Ray, they had spread like fire. Not even the high command could bury them. The collectors were real, the betrayals were real. And humanity had seen it all. Riots followed. Protests burned across colonies. Soldiers tore off their badges. Pilots refused orders. People stood together not by species, but by pain. But Ray never made it back. Sierra clutched the old communicator he gave her. It no longer beeped. It was quiet now. But she carried it like it was part of her body. They called her the voice of the lost. They asked her to speak, to tell the story. She did, but she always began the same way. It started with one meal, she said. One meal from a soldier who should have shot me. The resistance grew fast. Aliens, humans, and hybrids stood side by side. They didn't want revenge. They wanted truth and peace that didn't cost innocent lives. Sierra became a leader not because she asked to, but because others saw something. In her, they had lost hope. One day, months later, she stood at the ruins of an old military base. It had been bombed by its own commanders after Ray's signal to destroy evidence, but they failed. A boy handed her a broken helmet from the rubble. It had Ray's name still scratched across the side. Sierra knelt down. Her hands shook as she held it close. It still smelled like hem dust, oil, and courage. She didn't cry. Not this time. She closed her eyes and remembered that first night. Hungry, cold, afraid, and a stranger offered her food without asking who she was. That was the moment her life changed, and maybe the galaxy too. The new council was formed in secret. A mix of scientists, civilians, rebels, and defected officers. They called themselves the Witnesses. Because they had all seen what others tried to hide. Their symbol wasn't a flag. It was a meal bar, broken in half, shared between two hands. Sierra gave one speech that was broadcast across 9 systems. She stood in front of a quiet crowd, wearing Ray's old jacket, and said, They built walls between us, but they forgot something. We all bleed, we all lose people, we all cry, and sometimes we all starve. But when one of us reaches out and feeds the other, we become more than data. We become something they can't control together. The crowd didn't cheer. They stood in silence. Some cried, some smiled, and somewhere, among them, Ray's name was whispered like a prayer. Sierra looked at the stars that night. Not with fear, but with promise. She didn't know where the collectors were hiding now. She didn't know if they would return, but she knew one thing. Next time, the galaxy would be ready. Not with weapons, but with unity and truth. She sat alone beside a small fire, pulled out the last ration bar Ray had given her, still sealed. Still whole, she broke it in half, placed one piece on the ground, and whispered, "For you, soldier." Above her, satellites blinked. New signals traveled fast and free. Not for war, but for warnings, stories, and peace. And far away, on a quiet hill where the grass had begun to grow again, a metal plate stood in the dirt, simple, unmarked, except for one line, engraved deep. One meal changed everything. Asterisk.